our Conservation Director, Chris Payan, our DPW Director, and then we also have here our engineering consultants from GM2, Eric Carlson, over there, and Stefan Zaitz. So thank you again for everyone for coming. We do have some refreshments in the back, some water and cookies, so please enjoy. They're from Yummy Mummy, which is a local bakery, if you've never heard of them. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Eric, who is going to do a presentation in regards to the BWALT Section 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Good evening. Thank you for coming. I see some familiar faces. I look forward to meeting all of you tonight. This is a milestone for this project. I believe it's the first public meeting that we've had to specifically talk about the design of this segment 2 of the project. So we have a presentation that I'm gonna walk through the design parameters, the way the project has been laid out so far, discuss some of the key issues that we've been dealing with as we've been moving through the design. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions afterwards. So I just request that if you could hold your questions until the end of the presentation, that way we can be organized and we can address everybody's comments all at once at that time. Okay, so here's a brief outline just so you can understand what to expect. We're going to run through the project history, purpose and goals of the project, the project area and limits. Does everybody know the project limits right now, or is it still a little fuzzy? Okay, so we're going to make sure that you all understand where the project begins and where it ends, and all the way through. We'll discuss some of the existing conditions and key issues, okay, that we're going to have to deal with as we move through the design process further. We'll talk about the proposed scope of construction work, okay. There's some interesting elements to this project. As an engineer, I find it quite a challenge and exciting. There will be some right-of-way requirements, nothing to get alarmed about, but we'll talk about what that means with everybody. And then we'll explain what you might expect during construction and overall next steps. I'm going to say right now, though, that if this project had the funding for final design, it would be a minimum of 2 years, okay, before a shovel ever hit the ground. So there's a lot of work to be done. I want everybody to understand that right up front. This is not happening next spring, okay? Okay, so as you may know, that there was a feasibility study that was prepared in 2021, and that essentially planned for, I believe, 6 segments of multi-use trail throughout the town. Segment 1, which is mainly on Oda Street, is further along than this project. I believe it's in a final design phase, and that is being funded by, I believe it's a MassWorks grant and some MassDOT dollars as well. And there may be $4 million toward that project. Okay, so that is segment 1. Segment 2 is the project we're here to talk about tonight. So we won't even get into it during this meeting, segments 3 through 6, okay? Because I don't know the details about them anyway, okay? So we started off our efforts in the spring. I think it may have been March, okay? And we've done a lot of work between March and now. And it's been a fast-paced project because we've been working against a grant. And it was a DCR Mass Trails grant that had a deadline of the end of June. And so it was a pretty big hustle, to get to where we are. But this is a good time to present the details of the project. So our scope of design services, okay, are listed out here. It began with field survey and base plan preparation. You probably saw our surveyors out on the job collecting their data. We also flew the site using aerial photogrammetry, which enhanced the ground survey that we were able to collect. So we probably got a 250-foot swath of aerial survey along this path. So we have a very good understanding of the existing conditions at this point in the project. We also did our environmental investigations. There are a number of environmental resource areas on the project. You have bordering vegetated wetlands throughout the project area. We had to understand where they were, and we worked with your Conservation Commission through the filing of what's called an ANRAD, which tied down those lines, okay, the wetland lines. Okay, so we're all in agreement as to where those wetland lines are. There's also the Assabet River that runs through the midpoint of the project. And so you have riverfront and floodplain associated with the Assabet. And so we've studied that, we've documented that as well. There's also a vernal pool that we investigated early in the spring. I think it was March. And our wetland scientists have determined that it meets the criteria to be certified, which is a good thing for the project and for the vernal pool because it adds protection, okay, around it. We also prepared what we call a functional design report, which is more or less a traffic study, okay, which studies the existing conditions, the existing traffic operating characteristics in the project area, and then discusses proposed improvements or how this project can propose improvements to make the project elements safe for the traveling public. Then, of course, we have preliminary design plans, and we have brought an abbreviated set with us this morning because I think the full set is 300 sheets. But we have brought the construction plans, typical sections, and other such details that if people have particular questions about a particular segment of the project, we can, after the presentation, drill down into those plans one-on-one. As part of the process, we also prepared preliminary right-of-way plans. Now, all of this is prescribed work for a project that may be funded by MassDOT, okay? They're very particular in their expectations of a design package, okay? So it hasn't been determined yet that this would be funded by MassDOT, but we're covering all those bases. We've done geotechnical studies. There is a bridge proposed to get this path across the Assabet River. And so we've advanced 2 borings, one on either side of the river, so that we can understand the soil conditions, depth of bedrock, okay? And then that information will be used to design the bridge foundation and support systems. We've done hydraulic studies of the Assabet River so that we understand how it operates, okay, and how it operates during different design storms, okay, and what to expect in terms of flooding. Because we do not want to design a bridge that's going to be inundated. by a flood. And then we've done a bridge type study. And the bridge type study is the first step in understanding types of bridges. We've looked at two types, a wooden bridge and a steel truss. And it looks at the feasibility of both, relative costs, advantages, and disadvantages. So again, all of this is prescribed for a MassDOT submission, and we are very close to having the plans and these reports complete at this time in order to move the project along. So there's a lot of benefits to the project. I'm not here to sell the project. I'm just here to explain, what can be and what the challenges are. So there's always safety enhancements on any transportation project. There are a number of existing crossing locations. Whether this project comes along or not, you have existing crossing locations that could be improved. For instance, on Milk Street is one. The benefits include increased mobility. We all need to move around a little more, right? I live in Wakefield, and we have a bike path that's being developed, and they've paved the first phase of it, and I can't wait until they finish it, so I can ride my bike all the way up into Peabody and Lynn. Improved health, environmental benefits as well. You get onto a bike, okay, as opposed to your car, you're reducing emissions. Economic growth, it's very helpful to have alternate modes of transportation, okay, to help support local businesses and for people to get back and forth through town a little easier. Community connectivity. Okay, so here's a zoom in of segment 2. And it begins right here on Otis Street. And are you all familiar with Oda Street? Have you traveled it? Say yes. Okay. So if you've traveled it, there's a long sag curve, right? And when you get to the bottom of that sag curve, okay, that is right opposite Hocomonco Pond, okay? And that's where this trail is proposed to begin. And then it continues really through the rear of some industrial facilities, some warehousing. Probably most of you have never been back there, okay? But it's nice. It's a nice area. It's adjacent to wetlands. And it's a good connection, okay, between segment 1 and segment 3. So it winds its way through, and I have other exhibits that are going to drill down in a little more detail, but I want to make sure everybody understands where this is going. It goes by a sewer pump station, okay, which is on one side of the Assabet River, and then it crosses the Assabet River right here, okay, and here's your wastewater treatment plant, okay, so it goes along the side of the treatment plant, and then it pops out on Meadow Road and continues to Milk Street, where there's a crossing. There's an existing crossing, but we're proposing a better crossing, something that we think will be a little safer to support this facility. Then it's going to run alongside Milk Street, okay, until it reaches a parcel of land called 161 Turnpike, 161 Milk, which is adjacent to another parcel that's being developed off the Route 9. And it'll run through an easement, okay, that the town has negotiated with these two properties. So it'll run along the outer edge of those developments. They're going to be new developments, okay? It's existing conditions. I think they're reuse of there was a roller skating rink, I believe, okay? Then it's going to run up to Route 9. And there's a wetland right here, okay, that we want to avoid impacts to the extent possible. And so there's a segment of the trail that's going to run adjacent to Route 9, okay, but it'll be down. It'll be down as low as we can get it to reduce the impacts to the wetlands. Then it actually continues on Park Street for a few hundred feet where there's another proposed crossing, okay? And then that's the setup for the future phase, segment 3, okay? So it's going to begin at Oda Street and end at Park Street. Okay, everybody found there? Got their bearings? Okay, good. Okay, so usually, this facility doesn't exist yet. And usually on a roadway project that we might be working on, we can point to all sorts of deficiencies, okay? But this facility doesn't exist. So what we're going to do is just show you what is, okay? So this is where the project begins on Oda Street, okay? And you can see, you've probably driven by this many times. It's kind of a ultra-wide shoulder area. And this is all town layout. The layout actually runs back by the trees. Okay, so I'm going to show you some good ideas that we have to kick the project off here. Okay, then it will continue eventually, and this is the, we're in between this, where I'm flashing here is the wastewater treatment plant, and behind me in this photo is the sewer pump station, okay? And so there's an access road here already, okay? And the path is going to go on this side of the access road. And we'll maintain access for the, the utility, but it'll be adjacent to it. And this will also facilitate the construction of the project. Then we get to Milk Street, and we're going to discuss this crossing in more detail, but this is an existing crossing on Milk Street. I believe it was moved. It was further down. It was moved up recently, and I'll discuss that a little more in detail. I think it's a good location. And then the project will terminate here on Park Street, okay, and it'll wind around and kind of run on this side of Park Street, and then there'll be a crossing right over in this area here to set up segment 3. Okay, the proposed scope of work briefly. Okay, it's almost 2 miles long. There'll be a staging area, okay, where you can park and unload your bike, okay, or park and begin your walk. Maybe there's an interpretive sign there, okay, maybe some benches at that location. We do have the bridge over the Assabets, but also some boardwalks, okay, and I'll explain why we are recommending those. There's some highway retaining wall construction that would be along Route 9, okay, and these are the key elements of the project. There are drainage system improvements all the way along. In some cases, we're intercepting an existing drainage system, so we need to extend it. There are other areas, like at Route 9, where there is a continuing drainage issue, okay, that is associated with Route 9, and we're going to be working with MassDOT through this project to get that corrected and improved. And of course, there'll be pavement markings, signage, and as I said, landscape and streetscape amenities, okay, which are typical for projects of this type. Okay, so this is where it starts. Hocomonco Pond right here, okay, that low point on Oda Street, okay, and this is where we would begin the project with a staging area. I think there's parking for 10 vehicles at this location, including handicap parking. This over here is the proposed Oda Street improvement project. And so we've been coordinating with that design, okay? And that design includes these rapid flash signals, crossing signals. I understand you have quite a few in town. Does everybody know what a rapid flash signal is? Yeah? Okay, good. They're very effective. So the project continues, begins here, and then it continues, okay, behind. This is not Secaucus Drive, but this is the buildings that abut on Secaucus Drive, and it continues along the edge of those buildings there. So the gray represents pavement, okay? The beige represents sidewalk, okay? It could be cement concrete sidewalk. All of the proposed ramps, ADA compliant ramps, we would propose as cement concrete, just because of tolerance. There is no tolerance with ADA. You have to meet those requirements. Otherwise, they get ripped out. So it's really a standard practice now to construct those out of cement concrete. And the green represents areas that are likely to be disturbed that would be restored, typically with loam and seed at that point. Okay. So now here's a rendering of that Otis Street parking area here with the path beginning. And I said maybe an interpretive sign here, trash can, what do they call those? Doggy cans, okay, you gotta have those. Maybe a bench along the way. There's other opportunities for that. And this here is the proposed path. I don't think it's concrete that's being proposed there, but it'll be a path, the Oda Street MassWorks project. Okay? So now we've turned the corner, and now we're behind this Westco distribution center, and they have parking here, and there's some fenced areas here, but we'd be running adjacent to that area, and we haven't yet met with them, but there may be alternatives to push this path just a little closer, because these are wetlands here, and we are trying to minimize the impacts to those wetlands. So that's an alternative that we're going to be looking at. But this is running adjacent to a sensitive area, okay? And again, this has been designed to, again, minimize those impacts to the maximum extent practicable. Okay, so now we start to wind around this area. Now this is a drainage detention basin for this development here. And so this is actually not considered wetlands, okay, because it's a man-made detention basin area. But we still have wetlands on the outside here. So we're hugging the top of that detention basin, okay, with this path, okay, winding on through that segment. Okay, then we get up here, and here's where Secaucus Drive, okay, comes in close, or the path comes in close to that drive. And so we're winding along the edge of that. And then we continue here, and here's the pump station, the sewer pump station. And here's their access road. And so we'd be coming alongside of it, and then we kind of join up, okay, because we have to share. They need access out here too. So from time to time, and I don't think it's frequently, they may need to drive a pickup truck or whatever equipment they use to go do an inspection of some of their facilities down that way. But we wind around the pump station. And then, did you skip ahead too far, or is... Okay, you back up. Okay, so the pump station's over here now, okay? And here's the Assabet River crossing. And this is showing a proposed timber alternative, which I think is very aesthetically pleasing. And this is the Assabet River. This would be the bridge. There'd be a bridge here, and it's a proposed 45-foot span. It's a simple span, okay? It's not extensive. And these are boardwalks, and these boardwalks would be elevated. And the reason they're elevated is because these are wetland resource areas, and we can elevate the path above the wetland resource areas. And I think they're elevated by 3 feet or so, okay? But it's enough to get up above the wetland resource areas and out of the floodplain, because that floodplain extends back to this area here, okay, from the river. Okay, so that's one view of the bridge. Okay, this is another view. Again, we're looking, there's the pretty sewer treatment plant up here, and so the path winds around there. Here's the Assabet River. Here's that utility path that's there today. It's a gravel area that they use. They have a manhole right about here that they need to access from time to time. Okay, and again, this here, from about here to here is bridge, and the approaches, okay, are elevated boardwalk. And this is a photo, an actual photo of that same design that's up in the town of Salisbury. And it's made of ippy wood. And everyone tells me I mispronounced that. But it's a very dense wood. It's got, I'm told, a 75-year lifespan. It is very smooth. There are no splinters associated with it. And it's solid, okay? And so this is an actual example in the town of Salisbury. This was constructed, I think, in 2020. This was a MassDOT project. They funded this project. It was 2 miles long as well. Okay. So then the bridge is over here and the boardwalk, and now we start to climb up out of the floodplain and the wetland resource areas, and now we're in Uplands, okay, and we're in between the wastewater treatment plant and a solar farm, and there are fences. Oh, of course, you can see them right here. Okay, so this is the solar farm. Here's a rendering. This is the solar farm on this side, and this is the wastewater treatment plant on this side. And so the path would run up alongside this fence. There'd be a 3-foot separation between the fence and the edge of pavement. And then it would continue, and it would continue to follow at this point the perimeter fence of the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, and that perimeter fence, you can probably see it right here, that kind of a dark line right there. And then it heads off that way. So it would continue, and it would follow that fence. Now, in this area, there is, and it may be right over here, there is that vernal pool that I spoke of. And so that vernal pool also has a buffer zone, okay, for protection purposes. And one of the ideas we have right now is not to continue the pavement right on through, but to propose what we're calling an elevated boardwalk, okay, which might only be a foot or 2 above existing ground. And that itself may help facilitate the migration of the critters that are going to and from the vernal pool, salamanders in particular, but there's other species that visit the vernal pool. Okay, so then we start to head up toward Meadow Road, and there's that little turnaround here. If you've ever been down Meadow Road, take a trip. It's a nice street, and there's a little turnaround here, and this is the entrance to the treatment plant is right about here, okay? And Meadow Road is I think it's 24 feet wide. It's really a residential roadway. It's low speed, it's a local road, so the speed limit's 25. Our traffic data indicates that, you know, what we call the 85th percentile when we're talking traffic. That's the speed at which 85% are going slower and 15% are going faster. The 85th percentile, from the counts that we obtained, were 24 miles an hour. So that's telling us people are driving the speed limit on that road. There are a few outliers that we picked up. You know, somebody was doing 40 one day, and that can throw the numbers off. But it's a safe road, and what we're proposing at this point is for bikes and people to enter the roadway and walk in the roadway as they do today, and bike in the roadway as they do today, but we'd provide this, it's called a sharrow. It's kind of share the road markings, and there'd be associated signage for that as well. Okay? So now we're approaching Milk Street. Okay, so folks are coming along on the road, okay, but now we got to get them back onto a path. And we need to get them onto a path so that we can control their crossing, okay, back over to this side of Meadow Road, and then control their crossing to the other side of Milk Street. So this is one of the techniques that is used, okay, and right now we're thinking that we would continue the path at this point here at the end of Fairview Court. Okay, this is where it would begin again. Okay, and there'd be crossings here. And here at the crossing of Milk Street would be the rapid flash system. Okay, so here's another rendering of what that would look like, Meadow Road, and here's the path coming along, and then the folks would cross here and then cross again. And these are the rapid flash systems, and you're all familiar with them, but we did take a photo of one on Route 30, okay? And they are very effective. Okay, now Milk Street. Milk Street carries quite a bit more traffic. I think it was 11,000, 13,000 cars a day, all right? It's a busy road. I've seen busier, okay, but it's a busy road. You have excellent sight distance in both directions from this crossing. This crossing is well positioned, but people do speed, okay? It's posted at 30 miles an hour, and I think the 85th percentile was 39 miles an hour. So you've got some speeders on this road, okay? And I found myself speeding on it today. I didn't even realize it, but I popped off of Route 9 and came around that loop, and we were going to meet up for pizza at Papagino's, and I was doing 37. And I said, whoa, I'm speeding. Okay, so it happens. So we can help to control that. There are a number of ways. You've got speed limit signs in both directions. We've seen them, okay? But we can provide some advanced signage, okay, again, in both directions. And these rapid flash systems are excellent. They're highly visible, and they're up around 7 feet or so. So when those are flashing, they're visible from a long ways in both directions, okay? So some other techniques, okay, is enforcement, all right? It helps. I live in Wakefield. I work in Medford. I travel through Wakefield. I travel through Melrose. I travel through Malden. Okay, Main Street. It's one street the whole way. Takes me a half hour door to door. And I pass through a number of these rapid flash systems, but I also encounter 2 or 3 of these speed feedback signs. Are you familiar with those? You know, it gives a speed limit, and it says your speed, okay, and it flashes, slow down, okay. You know, that could be something that we also consider in this project. So my point is there are a number of techniques in the toolbox, okay, to make these crossing locations safe. Okay. All right, so now we're crossing along Milk Street. This crossing is no longer here, okay, although it shows up in the aerial. We're crossing along Milk Street. This is the Colton Gardens location here. There is a intermittent stream that flows in this direction and it kind of winds its way and comes out this way. So at this location here, there's no sidewalk today. There's no sidewalk along this entire side of the road today, okay? So in order to construct this, okay, we're gonna need to extend that pipe. I think it's a 24-inch drainage inlet, okay? We'll need to extend it with a new head wall, okay, which is done all the time. Okay, there are some utility poles that are right in the way of where we want the path to be. And I try not to design around utility poles. Sometimes you have to, but for now, we're assuming that those poles would get relocated out of the way. So it's a little bit of a challenge there, working with the utility. And then in areas that were adjacent to wetlands, and we're trying our best to minimize impacts, we can employ a technique which is called a modified rock fill slope, okay? So, you know, your grass slopes, a 2-to-1 slope is about a 3-to-1 slope is really about as steep a slope as you can mow safely, okay? A 2-to-1 slope and what that means is 2 feet horizontal for every 1 foot drop. That'll hold, grass will stand up on that, okay? If you get any steeper, you go to modified rock fill or a retaining wall, okay? So that's what we're proposing as we come around the corner. I got to get my bearings again here because I keep flipping around. This path moves. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so this is that proposed new development, and so the path is now running through an easement, okay, that's been negotiated with the town. Okay. And there's 2 parcels of land. There's this parcel and this parcel. They're both being redeveloped. And so this continues over here, and then we take a corner. And there's wetlands all down here. Okay, there's some wetlands down here as well. Okay, and we've done our best. I think we're out of them, really, in most of these areas. And then we approach Route 9. Here's Route 9, okay? And now we're approaching Route 9, and now we're coming down in elevation. We're turning the corner, and we're running adjacent to Route 9, but below it, okay? So if your head is here, you know, Route 9 is up another, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet, okay? And the traffic is back here in the travel lane. So there's actually a pretty good distance there. But we are proposing to put a chain link fence up on the guardrail of Route 9 just to keep any debris from drifting over. This here is, you might even be able to see it, but this is a drainage issue that's been continuing, and I guess MassDOT really hasn't gotten a handle on it. But this project would working with MassDOT, we'd be able to solve that problem. There's a lot of erosion, okay, of material on the bank. There's even I think it's a gas main that's currently exposed. Is it gas or is it water? I think it's gas. It's gas. Okay, not good. And so we're going to work to solve that problem. Okay, then now we're on the property here of 210 Turnpike Road. Okay, and you're probably familiar with that building. And we're going to run around the perimeter of that property. Okay, we run around the perimeter up to Park Street, final crossing, and then the project ends right here. And phase segment 3 would continue through this area here. Now, there may be plans to do something at this property as well. So we'll be working with this owner, okay, to really enhance this so that this path blends in very well with his project. And this would be, again, a crossing with those rapid flash lights. Now, Park Street carries about 800 cars a day, okay? And it's got a posted speed limit of 25 miles an hour. But that's only in the northbound direction, okay? There is no speed limit sign in the southbound direction. So, maybe we can work to get one installed, okay? Like as soon as you make the turn, kind of a deal, all right? And I forget the traffic, so it's posted at 25 and traffic is traveling 33 or thereabouts. So they're traveling a little fast. I mean, they're coming off of Route 9, and Route 9's a scary highway. I get scared driving on it, to be honest. And I'm a highway engineer. But what happens is, you want to slow down to get off at Park Street, and you've got people who are hustling behind you. All right, so it's a little intimidating, but people do make the corner, obviously, and they're turning into this drive, they're turning into this drive and this drive. But I think, again, we can, through some simple signage improvements and maybe some other techniques, make that as safe as can be, okay? Okay, and this is just a rendering. Okay, so we've turned the corner, and here's that retaining wall along Route 9, and the path continues onto Park Street, and then here's that final crossing there. So that's the nickel tour of the project area. Okay, project right-of-way requirements. Okay, doesn't need to be scary. Okay, I think most of the right-of-way is associated with these commercial industrial projects, but there will be the need also for temporary easements. So when you construct the path and you have to blend it into the property adjacent, a little loam and seed. Okay, that would be a temporary easement. There may be the need for some permanent easements as well. I don't anticipate the town's going to acquire any land for this, and a permanent easement doesn't change your frontage or your lot area in any way. So that's very often used to accomplish this work. And of course, the town would probably love to have donations, okay, which are sometimes done. Okay, I talked a little bit about construction, which is way out there, okay? But this would be phased work. The contractor wouldn't open it up all at once. He wouldn't be allowed to, okay? They would proceed in phases, orderly. There'd probably some time restrictions given, the work in the wetlands and adjacent resource areas. Traffic would be maintained at all times. Access to your properties would be maintained at all times. That's really customary. There may be intermittent times when redoing a driveway crossing that, for a day, you may not have access, okay, at that point, but otherwise you would, certainly beyond construction hours, okay? I would think they could do this job in 2 years, okay, but we live in New England and our construction seasons are short, and it would depend on when the project was advertised for construction and they were able to break ground, but I would see that time frame as being reasonable. Okay, and so the next steps is, we're going to hear from you all shortly. Following this meeting, we'll incorporate your comments and into the design to the maximum extent practicable. Then we'll button up the entire design package. We'll make a submission to the town. We'll get their review. We'll address those comments, and we'll put a ribbon on it for now. Okay, that'll be the end of the preliminary design phase. At the same time, and even now, we've been discussing, okay, how do we fund the rest of this project? And there are a number of mechanisms, and it could be through MassDOT, it could be through other grants, it could be through a combination of multiple grants and MassDOT. Um, Right now, this project is estimated at around 6 million, okay? So it's good to find funding, okay, elsewhere, rather than local appropriations necessarily, okay? And the final design development phase, okay, I would anticipate 2 years, okay? Because there's final design plans to be prepared, there's permitting, okay, and there are a number of permits that'll be required, and 2 years just feels right. So 2 years of final design, then 2 years of construction, okay? If you had the money today, 4 years, you're looking at being able to ride on the path, okay? These projects take time, unfortunately, okay? All right, so that brings us through. I think Jenny may moderate questions, and she'll probably hand off the questions to whoever's appropriate, whether it's the town or the design team. Thank you.
So if you can make it easy for me, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone so everyone can hear you, and then I'll distribute the question.
Two questions. Is this trail only for the bike, or you can just walk on it? Is a bike and walking trail together, or just bike?
Thank you. She asked if it's a trail for just bikes or walking. It's a multi-use trail, so it would be for bikes and pedestrians. Oh, okay. And can you just introduce yourself?
My name is Wendy, and I live at 10 Butterfield Drive, and we were told our neighborhood will be impacted because we have existing easement in the neighborhood that will be paved by this trail. I don't know, is that true? That's why we are here.
Do you know if Butterfield Drive is part of this section? Okay, so that's a different section. Yeah. That's okay.
Hi, Brad Avergon, 2100s Road. I have a question. This is with regard to, it seems like a fairly long trail. How do you, assuming that you get outside funding, outside of the taxpayers' funds to complete the project, what about the security of this long trail area in the evening? I'm concerned about drugs, alcohol. We've had issues in the town in the past. How's that going to be maintained?
Maybe we can both answer that one, but at its basics, there'd be rules, okay, and the trail may not be open past sunset. These rules haven't been determined yet, but there's probably a butcher's list of do-nots, okay, which are typical for these paths. Your comment comes up at most meetings where people think that this will suddenly be a magnet for, hangouts. And there are studies, and we can provide links to those studies, but there's been quite a number of studies done, including from Federal Highway, that show it's actually the opposite. Because the riffraff do not want to hang out where people are, the ordinary public are walking by. So I had a project some years ago up in Winchendon. Has anyone ever been up to Winchendon? And have you ridden the paths up there? The North Central Pathway? Okay. So it was an old railroad bed, and it opened up into an old railroad yard, and you had houses on either side, and that was their big concern, okay? That never manifested, okay? The place was cleaned up. It looked beautiful. It almost turned it into a park, okay, this old railroad yard. And whatever riffraff may have been hanging out went elsewhere, okay? So we can provide links to studies, okay, that you could review that kind of show it's the opposite. It'll be 10 feet wide, yes. And that's for police, it's for maintenance, it's for emergencies, okay? Okay. We thought that was...
I can yell, I can coach it up. Hi, my name's Annette Parent, and I live at 1 Indian Pond Road. I'm wondering if you can bring the slides back up. I have some questions about our neighborhood and our property. Oh, I get the point? Yeah. So first, I want to address the gentleman's question too, because I'm concerned about certain amount of trash. I don't know if like, and he's been going to Walmart lately, but there's a whole heck of a lot more trash laying around in streets and stuff. And so I agree with the gentleman that I'm wondering about, like, this is our neighborhood. So in particular, like on Meadow Road in Indian Pond Road, have you thought about, instead of coming down Meadow Road and Indian Pond Road, to going back over to where like the job lot is and using the already like tarred area so that it would connect over
Through
to
the shopping center?
Yeah. That'll keep everybody out of our neighborhood.
Okay, that was not part of our scope to look at that. Okay, we had a route that we were studying, but we have discussed potential connections, okay, to that shopping center as well, okay? You're afraid of trash?
I just don't know. I had heard a number, like what's the number of people that you expect to come in the year?
I don't know what the trends are yet, and I don't know if there's been a study.
So what's the foot traffic going to look like in your neighborhood? So if you go, can you go back one more? So 1 Indian Pond Road, I'm not sure what your yellow lines are. I'm not sure what you plan on doing with my property.
Yeah, those are the layout lines.
Okay, so what is it going to look like right by my house if this goes through? What is it going to look like?
Just like it looks like today.
So there's not going to be, you don't have to take any, all these green trails that you're making with the.
Yeah, no.
No.
So we put them on the road.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have some pavement markings in front of your house. See the shallows? Okay, there may be some pavement markings.
Yeah.
In front of your house.
Okay.
Okay, but that would be the extent of it.
So are there going to be people parking up and down in order to get on?
Is it a public way?
Yes. Well, is it?
I don't know
is it?
that, I don't
Yeah.
know that people would park there per se. That's a good question,
Because our streets are really crowded. Like, those are narrow, right?
yeah,
So we
no,
can
I
barely
understand
fit, yeah.
that, and it's a nice neighborhood. There is a staging area at Oda Street, so I think that might be people's first choice. I think you're gonna find your neighbors walking on this path, and they're just gonna walk down the street and jump on the path and have a nice walk.
Well, our neighbors, we just walk up and down the neighborhood. We don't need an extra path and bring in all kinds of other people into our neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had heard numbers like 160,000 foot traffickers throughout a year. I don't know if that number is right, 160,000 people coming.
That's a lot of people.
So if people are coming through my road, you know what? Like, Eric, how far is that, like, from my dining room right there to that road? So I'm going to have 160,000 people joining me for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
I can't see that.
I love y'all, but I don't know.
You know, there are,
It's what? How many?
160,000.
Over the year.
That might be on the whole system, okay, which is, I don't know how many miles in the whole system. This is 2. There's 6 segments, okay? There's, some of these segments are much longer.
Well, this makes a big impact to me personally, and I think it makes a big impact on our neighborhood, like Meadow Road and all the way up in Nippon and in Fairview. And I don't know why that green area, that little green area right there just can't go that way, so it doesn't touch any of Meadow Road and then go up through the job lot area. It seems to me there'd be a lot less like construction going on, because you're going to be coming out right onto Blackwell. And then that road right there is going to connect over to, what is it, where the Route 9 area goes. So this comes up over here, we come out right where you park it. And then we're staying away from the Vernal Pool, we're staying away from all.
So, yeah, I would So I'll just say we were going by the feasibility study when we were looking at where this design is going, but we want tonight to get comments from you all, so we'll take your comment, and as we go further into the process, we'll take into consideration any alternate routes.
Does that make sense to you, though, that we wouldn't want like a whole bunch of
We would have to evaluate it, but I do understand your
Personally, I
concern.
mean, if you lived in my house, do you want do you want to bring a bunch of unknown people into your neighborhood, have breakfast with you, lunch and dinner? I don't know.
Yeah, it is currently a public way, so, well, we understand your comment, and we'll,
Right, and listen, I like the idea of nature running, I mean, I get all that, but this is not what I bought my house for, right?
Okay.
I didn't buy my house to have this.
well, let's,
And so if I wanted a public way, I could have moved to Main Street, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
This was a quiet little area that used to be Meadow.
well, we appreciate the comments, and we have them taken down. Hold on one second, sorry.
Hello. My name is Darlene Domingos, and I'm the administrator for the Westborough Wastewater Treatment Plant Board. I'm here representing the board tonight, and the board does have some concerns about the proximity of the bike trail to the wastewater treatment plant, which you pointed out, and you could put it back up there if you want. So first of all, like everyone else, we are concerned about safety and security, the proximity to the wastewater treatment plant. There's a lot of expensive equipment there, as well as open tanks that will now be, right now it's really not very noticeable, but obviously it will be with lots of people going by. We're concerned about the solar array field there. You're very close to that. That is 38% of the power to the plant is supplied by that field. The underground utilities run right where you have the bike path, so if something happens there, that will have to be dug up to access the field. Also, vehicles go in and out of the solar array field to do maintenance. You talked about this being a benefit to economic growth. Well, one of the concerns we have at the wastewater plant, and I'll show you something I brought with me, is, yep. One second. So I have a graph showing the growth of the flow to the wastewater treatment plant over the past 6 years. Obviously, it's trending up. We are not at our limit yet, but we are approaching 80% of the design. So this is over 6 years. If over the next 5 to 10 years we get to a point where we need to expand the wastewater treatment plant, your bike path would be right in the same area. It actually overlaps the area that we have for a future design plan for the wastewater treatment plant. So we either would have to move the bike path or find an alternative site for the wastewater to go. So we're very concerned about proximity to the wastewater treatment plant.
Chris Pant, Director of Public Works. So we've been working with the treatment plant board and Darlene. We're well aware of, the proximity of the path to the treatment plant. We're also aware of potential for expansion, but I think there's things that can be worked out based on this existing design. Otherwise, we wouldn't have proposed it. So my comment is just to make sure we all understand that you all understand we acknowledge the concerns of the plant, but I don't see those comments as preventing this from happening. It's just there might be some modifications we need to do. Maybe there's some better fencing or something like that, but there's ways to mitigate those concerns. So just want to make that clear.
So I just want to address that as well, a couple different pieces of that. So in hearing those concerns, and I hope you all understand we want to hear your concerns so that we can do further research and analysis. I looked into some other wastewater treatment plant facilities that have trails or pathways that either cross through them or go around the perimeter. So this is not an anomaly that we're proposing. Just in a quick search, I came up with 5 different facilities. There's one in Humboldt Bay, Arcata, wastewater treatment facility. In Brighton, Colorado, Northern Treatment. In Kings County, Washington, Brightwater. And then right here in Massachusetts, Deer Island, which is managed by MWRA. So there are places where you can have that sort of accommodation and not have it be a threat to safety. And then I just also wanted to speak to, as someone who's managed areas where we had concerns about vandalism. I worked at a facility in San Diego where we had an area that we constantly had issues with graffiti and kids being there after hours. We actually had people who had to would get stuck up on the cliffs and have to be helicoptered out, life flighted out. We tried everything to keep them out. From a land management perspective, we put dead fish in there, we put cactus in there, nothing kept those kids out. So we actually took a different approach. We opened it up to the public, and all of our problems and issues went away. So the studies that Eric is talking about are real. It works. When you invite the public in, they become much less appealing to teenagers as a hangout and to that after-hours activity.
Bill Panis, 21 Maynard Street, also in this area here. Can you go to the next slide after that one? One more, please. Yeah, that shows the turnaround at Meadow Street there. There's an existing trail that starts at Maynard Street near the pump station and goes north, and it ends up at the circle on Meadow Street. So somewhere along this lower left-hand corner, it's going to intersect your trail. So are you aware of that trail? Okay, I just was. What's that?
Badges, places that point out the trail. We're aware.
Okay, maybe some intersection or some, like, don't ignore it, just like destroy it or anything.
Parallel each other right there. And you know, the terrain, if you're familiar with that area, it sounds like you are. Okay, there's some really steep areas, but right over here is a more gradual area. So we're trying to take the path of least resistance.
Fine, as long as you're going to incorporate it into some sort of intersection. Okay.
Hi, my name is Christine Hackett. I'm for Indian Pond Road. Could you go to the next slide? Yeah, right there. Meadow Road is a very busy road. It's a short distance just to Indian Pond, but there are always cars on both sides of that road, and you can see in this picture right now how are bikers, walkers going to be walking in the street when there's cars on both sides? On top of that, there's a house that's going to be built on the corner. How is that going? How are people going to get through? How are cars going to get through? I sometimes wait 5 minutes to pull out of Meadow Road to get on Milk Street. Now I have to wait for them to cross the street before I can also pull out. Is this being addressed?
Yes.
It's a recording.
Recording? All right, sorry about that. Recorded. I'm on 10 Indian Pond Road. My name's Eric Hammond. You said yourself that street's meadow is 24 feet long, and you're going to cut it by more than half of the bike path? 24 feet wide, excuse me. 22 feet, well, at 24, 22. It is 22 feet. I measured it as well, but whatever. Are we talking about the bike path being 12 feet wide through that road?
What we're talking about is no bike path on that road.
No bike path.
Okay, people will be traveling on the road just like they do today. Do you ride a bike? And when you leave your house, do you travel down Meadow Road? And you just take the road, don't you? Okay, that's what share the road is. You can take the road, you can take that travel lane. Okay? It's a very short road. I understand, but that's the law with sharrows, and you can drive right down that travel lane with a car behind you, and we've studied the intersection, and we think we can make it safer than it is today. People want to cross that street. We're not, but we could. You have a sidewalk gap, and I believe there are easements there are easements on the properties, okay, on Meadow Road that the town has interest in, and the project could construct sidewalks, okay, from the end of Meadow Road where the path ends, okay, it would be an easy addition to the project to construct a sidewalk or even the path along one side of Meadow Road. Then maybe the town needs to put up no parking.
Can you just repeat her question?
Okay, so her question, I get it. Her question is, and this photo, we get it. The photo is excellent because you can see cars parked on Meadow Road. And in some places, they're parked directly opposite another car. Okay, so a car is about 8 feet wide. So there's 16 feet out of a 24-foot road, leaves you 8 feet to sneak through, okay? It's a narrow road. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is excellent feedback, okay? I think that we can work to better understand how parking and travel and the bus operates on Meadow Road. And I think that we can still make the project work, maybe with a few adjustments. Okay, it happens everywhere. There are share the road conditions all over, okay? And it's that idea of everyone has a right to travel on the road. And we're gonna make it safe. We're gonna make it safe. Yeah.
I just want to reiterate that this is a preliminary design, and so we're looking for your comments. This is not a done deal yet, so we really do appreciate your comments. And if we can just keep it at one at a time, because it is being recorded and it's hard for the public to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Lisa Borgat. I live at the corner of Milk and Meadow, and I see that crosswalk there is a death trap. Like, school buses stop there and cars keep going by. I call the police several times because of accidents. Right there, within a very short distance, there are 7, I think you'd call it ingress into the road. Yeah, and one of them comes from, the worst one is coming out by Papa Gino's there, because it's basically blind, and those people pull out of there going really fast in order to get onto 135. And the traffic on the weekend and what would be after school when you would see more people biking, that road is horrible.
So we need to work to make it safer, get those cars to slow down. Okay, are we all in agreement? Okay, we gotta slow these cars down.
Robert Gilmore, 35 Water Street. In addition to, speaking of slowing things down, I haven't seen, maybe I missed, plans for bollards or chicanes. Are there plans? I'm just curious.
There will be. Those elements, bollards, are very often installed at the beginning of a path. Okay, and there's other techniques as well. You want to be able to get emergency vehicles in and maintenance vehicles in, but you want to keep errant vehicles out. And what was that? You said chains? Chicanes, okay. Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So do we have a close-up? Stefan and I were talking about chicanes. And they can be a technique where if you have, and it's got to be the appropriate location, where you can actually bring the curb line of a crossing in, okay, a little tighter, right up to the edge of the travelway. And what it does is it forces traffic to slow down, okay, because it's a natural chicane for. Okay, all right. I'm talking about cars, okay, and that's often used, and it reduces the crossing distance, okay? Sometimes we call them bulb outs, okay? And those have been very effective in other projects as well. Yeah.
My name is Richard Moore. I live at 151 Milk Street. My question is, the crosswalk that they put in not too long ago was up further, north, across from Meadowbrook, or is it Meadowbrook? West Meadow Plaza. Prior to that, want to go back? Prior to that, these two green lines on the right-hand side was actually a sidewalk. The town took it out and then moved the crosswalk right in front of Colton Gardens. My question is, are they going to build a sidewalk there, or are they going to be walking on the grass?
So in this situation here, okay, that path is proposed to follow alongside Milk Street. There'd be a 5-foot grass separation between the curb line of the roadway, okay, and the path is 10 feet wide. And then that other grass strip you're talking about, that's really just grading, okay, to blend. There's an area of grading. Say the path is 3 or 4 inches higher than the adjacent lawn, okay, there'd be some loam and seed put in there to blend it.
Extended question to that. When you put your walkway in,
Hold on.
how far in would it be from the side of the road into Colton Gardens property?
Okay, I'm looking at the plan here and I can see the highway layout line basically splits the path.
You're talking about the two lines, the two green lines that are running there?
I am not. The green lines are grass, okay? So here's the edge of pavement, right? And I'm a little wiggly, but you see that right there?
Yes.
That's the curb line of the road.
That was a sidewalk at one time, and the city came out, the town came out and took it out.
Okay. This is a 5-foot grass strip, okay? It provides a little buffer between the traffic and the people on the path. The path itself would be 10 feet wide, and then this grass here, okay, is really to blend back into existing conditions, okay? So what I anticipate, see this line here that runs down the path? Okay, that's a state highway layout line. And that in order to accommodate these improvements, there would be an easement, okay, requested, okay, from Colton Gardens to allow for the construction.
Can I just clarify, Stefan, can you go to the one that shows this crosswalk? Yep. So that crosswalk you can see painted, that's the crosswalk that everybody's referring to was removed. I'm sure everybody has been through that area of town where you're trying to get on Route 9, people coming out of the plaza, crossing over Milk Street when they shouldn't be. All kinds of crazy stuff happens there, and we had people trying to cross the street. That's all Mass DOT, so state ownership there. So the state, in coordination with us, assessed that intersection there, and they removed that crosswalk, if you can flip back to the other one, and then installed that crosswalk that exists today. And that sidewalk that extended along the right side where those green lines are going up the screen, so there was a sidewalk because it went to that old crosswalk, We asked them to remove that crosswalk because otherwise people would continue to walk down the crosswalk, or sorry, the sidewalk, and then cross even without a crosswalk. So that was a coordinated project with the state, but the state did that, and they own everything essentially from that crosswalk that you see on the picture here that goes across Milk Street to the plaza. So just to clarify kind of how that happened.
Hi, Joanne Aramini, 7 Meadow Road. I'd like to go back to project history for a second. You show the feasibility study being completed in 2021, and now here we are at a design plan. So I just want to understand it a little better. Is this a town-funded project? Does anybody know?
So this is a town-sponsored project that's driven by the feasibility study. There, as was explained at the beginning, and we can go back to that slide with all the different segments, we have various segments of the project. Some are already underway, and this is a component of it. The funding of the project is outside of the feasibility study, which I believe the town funded. Everything, I don't know who's funded the feasibility study, but I know the existing work that's being done. So the work that's being done is on West Park Drive, on the Flanders edge of town, and then on Otis Street, where our design is happening, that's all grant funded or externally funded. And then this project here that was just explained, that's just being completed now, so this portion of the design, that was funded by a grant that was, and a portion of that was funded by the town because there was a match required associated with the grant.
So,
Yes, and
so
it did.
Shelby Marshall, I'm serving as one of the select board members, so I can't quote the town meeting that we did the feasibility study, but there was money that was appropriated at town meeting for the original feasibility study that allowed us to do let me just finish, to do the initial work. So any expenditures by the town have to be approved at town meeting. So that there's a whole kind of history trail, no pun intended. And then this particular work of GM2 is part of a grant that we applied for and received. Does that answer your question?
And
Okay. Correct. That's, yeah. Yes, so that, so the feasibility study was that initial study done by, at the time, it was the Bike and Pedestrian Safety Committee. It's now the Active Transportation Safety Committee. That was sort of the initial step of very high-level concept using the old trolley roads and all of, and resulted in this. Well, not resulted in GM2's work, it resulted in a high level. From there, then it was like, do we like this concept and do we want to go forward, question mark. And so the question mark, and I've sat on the Active Transportation Safety Committee and I'm a liaison to that committee right now. Segment 1 was addressed, as was already mentioned, through the MassWorks DOT grant, non-town funded. So that was part of a development initiative, the Amazon property, the Cold Harbor, all of that that's being done. So when developers come in, and let me just take it in segments here, appreciate your patience. When developers, for example, come in and there's an opportunity to have a conversation about, is there anything else going on, Chris Pant might say, hey, we know we need to move some water lines or something else. It's an opportunity to have those conversations. So we had those conversations with the developers around basically what became segment 1. So no tax dollars, town time, yes, but that's part of the work that they do anyway with the developers, and I don't want to minimize that. But then we say, and we made a conscious decision with the feasibility study to say we can't do this whole thing in one fell swoop. That's like an impossibility. So let's break it down in reasonable sections. That's why you see the 1 through 5 here. And so that's how it was kind of spaced out, if you will. So now the agreement was, we're not going to do 1 and then jump over to 4 and do 5. You know, we're going to go in a logical order. So we're at 1, and now we're at 2. And so then the next step was, well, if we want to do 2 and even get this high concept design in the work of GM2, someone's got to pay for it. So the Active Transportation Safety Committee, working with town staff, applied for a grant of which we were successful in getting, and that is how this, all you're seeing his time here, the guy over there too, I didn't get your name, sorry, that is being paid for by the grant. That money will run out at some point in time. I think we sort of talked about that, and then the town will have to decide what's next, because this is like a high concept, very high concept, and the next phase would be asking for funding, potentially coupled with a grant, I don't know. Any town funding, again, has to go through town meeting. So to move beyond the GM2 work, and again, you can speak to kind of when you're like, okay, we're at our finish and we're all paid and we don't do any more under the grant, then anything else that the town expends that's not a grant has to go before town meeting. So, but you have to do initial concept work to even get to where we're at, and we're really thankful for the fact that we were able to get this far and bring this to us without spending any town money. That was that grant effort. So, but in order to go further, it's going to require additional work, and again, potentially a match on a grant, or, I mean, we mentioned Mass DOT. I mean, there are a lot of unanswered questions for funding. I mean, Jenny, I don't know if you have any on fundings going forward.
Yeah, right now, we don't have any funding going forward. We're talking to GM2 to get recommendations on how we could fund the next step of this, that we don't have any funding secured. Yes, and the question was, can grant funding come outside of town meeting? I assume you mean, and the answer is yes.
And so as an example, I mean, some grants may, by their nature, require a vote of some sort. It might require the select board, it might require, if the schools were having this conversation, that might require a vote of the school committee that's separate from this. But yes, there are grants that don't require a town meeting vote. It could be under the jurisdiction of the town administration or a department director. Yeah, so just for everyone else and so the comment, if I may, concerns with maintenance of it and other additional costs in the cost of the project itself. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think 6 million was the number you mentioned, and that's 6 million to build or 6 million to get to final design? Okay, just want to be clear, because
And that 6 million is based on this project moving through MassDOT. And if it moves through MassDOT, okay, MassDOT would pay 110% of the construction cost. But there's a process to get there, and there are other projects in town that are also proposed, okay? And this is what's called TIP money. It's called State Transportation Improvement Program money, okay? And any town can go after this money, okay? And MassDOT uses the money as well on Route 9. They're spending TIP money. There's probably 30 projects assigned to Westborough, okay, that are on the TIP. Okay, in one fact, maybe they've already been constructed, they're in design, or they're being programmed. Okay, but that is a route. Okay, I've had a 40-year love-hate relationship with MassDOT. I've done a lot of projects through MassDOT, And it's not an easy process, but they'll pay for it, okay? And so that's one way to get a project done, okay? But you're joined to the hip with them. So the $6 million, okay, is an estimate based on MassDOT weighted average bid prices, okay, which this all has to go out to public bid and be paid prevailing wages, okay, so that, but then MassDOT adds on, they'll provide resident engineering as well to oversee the construction of the project. And then they have percentages that they just throw at budgets at this stage, okay, that cover like utility force accounts. There might be 250,000 in this project. The resident engineering is 250,000. And they have a host of other add-ons, okay, which will inflate a project. Now, if this was done through another funding mechanism, you may be able to shave $1 million off that bottom line, okay? Still have the same product, okay? But you're still talking about a $5 or $6 million project.
And just as an example of tip money that was applied for, didn't require town meeting vote, and keep me honest here, Chris, is the application you submitted to the CMMPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, for improvements on East Main Street, right past the McDonald's area forward. So that's a funding program that our Public Works Director researched with his team of engineers and all, and came up with a program, submitted it, and it has been approved, and I think it's approved for 2029. So you got to get in the queue. It's a long queue. And all of these projects, just to emphasize the point, when you go through Mass DOT, they have certain requirements. I know many of the people in the room, I'm seeing faces, know those very well. Like it has to be a certain material. It can't be just like a grassy path, for example. So they have, once you sort of say, we want your money, we'll take the state money, they say, great, but you have to meet certain requirements. So just to be clear on that.
Someone brought up an alternate route that would take it away from all of these complications of trying to fit a square into a round hole. And we were assured that our input would be listened to, but in this plan, no mention of it at all. Another person mentions a different route. You're giving them the same cat answer. Yeah, we'll consider it.
At this, the question was about alternate routes, and at the May 30th meeting, there was a route proposed that went behind Ocean State Job Lot. We don't have the budget with GM2 right now to cover a full evaluation of that area, but we do have the comment, we understand it, and as we further evaluate this, again, this is the preliminary design, and we're taking all of these comments. If we move to the next step, or when we move to the next step, we may consider alternatives, but that would have to be considered part of the budget. Hold on one second.
Andrew Kenningsburg, 3 Smith Street. I want to make people aware of something. I've gone back through the history of town warrant articles. So basically going back well into the last decade, if you look at all the money that has been expended on the trail, and I think the grant that required town matching funds to do this study, correct? It was $110,000, I believe. See, we had all that up. We have spent somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000 already on this project. So I just want to make people aware of the amount of money that the town has already spent on this. Some of it was from warrant articles, some of it was money that was transferred from the open space fund. So, you know, there has been a substantial amount of money spent on this project over, you know, the last 12, 15 years. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Eric Waite. I live at 7 Franklin Ave, and I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 25 years, and today we had a staff meeting, and we talked about suicide amongst 8 to 18-year-olds, some as young as 5. And the reason why I mention that is because I completely understand the idea of safety, but we've got to take a more holistic approach when we talk about safety. You have a child in a classroom somewhere that feels isolated and alone because it's not safe to go outside because there isn't a bike trail for them to ride on. And I compare that to the bike trail that my wife and my 8-year-old son went, and we went to mattress store down in Holliston and realized, oh, there's this bike trail in Milford. And we went and we actually made 26 miles to the end and back. It's the longest he ever did. He felt great about it. When we made it to Ashland, we got off our bike, we bought some chocolate chip muffins. So I negated all the good for the bike trail, but in any case, walked around town there. Downtown, there's an old county store, country store. Came back to see the families out, the walkers, the friends, and to go by dozens and dozens of properties, which I completely understand the concern about people that are going to be as close, especially the neighborhood we've been looking at. But to see those houses with the desire paths from the backyard, in some cases stairs built up and over, to see homes that had the for sale signs maybe on the street, but definitely on the bike trail. So I'd have all kind of consider this as a, the big picture, and I know many are, and there are many benefits to this. This also doesn't solve the problem that people have rightly brought up as a concern, but I'm looking at 2039. Is this graph here that the things below the 2039, that's when we anticipate that might happen, which is 15 years from now? Am I doing the math right? So currently, if the second segment was built, I would imagine that many people would start at that parking lot and turn around before they exited into that neighborhood, which is sort of the point of contention. They'd go like I do when I do the Indian Trail path, and you walk around that and go back. Now again, that's not a long-term solution to your concerns. The last thing I'd say is, and I'd love to hear this from our traffic engineer, the part of town, the little X segment there by the Rotary with the no slip curb, no slip turns, you got to go 90 degrees, you have to look out like by Miss Henderson's house. It's older and it's safer. You see, when it's thin, it makes people realize, I better slow down. Route 9, obviously the opposite of that. I mean, even scared of driving on that thing. So potentially what could happen, maybe you can tell us the studies on this, is when people get used to potentially seeing more people in the crosswalk, they actually go slower. Right now, it's such a rarity. The speed on that road is, I can go 45, I can go 50. No one's ever crossing the street. So as you get more people out, it's a tipping point where it becomes a safer street versus an unsafe street. So it's just a couple things to consider, but I appreciate all the work that's gone into this and look forward to keeping an eye on it as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Byrne, 58 Flanders Road, and I am a member of the Active Transportation and Safety Committee and the crazy who wrote both the feasibility study and prior to that, the concept plan. And the first thing I want to mention is you should take a look at the concept plan because this is not just a Westborough project. I'm running around and talking to 7 other communities, if you count Worcester right now, to connect Worcester to Framingham and up to Berlin and Marlborough with some side paths. The reason to go to Berlin is because the state's building a little bike trail from Boston to Northampton, which will then go down to New Haven, and you can continue on that to Key West, Florida. But the other thing is that this was emphasized as much in the concept plan to be a commuter trail, to get some people off of Route 9, get people, particularly living in Westborough and Shrewsbury and places like that, being able to get to the T station, for instance, without having to drive and to do things to make our town better. Also, the people who expressed the concerns about the number of people, there was in the concept plan based on what is considered the best study at the time, a estimate of how many users. But that's for when the whole plan and Northborough and Shrewsbury and Southborough have built parts of theirs. This is not going to happen for most of us in our lifetime. I don't expect to be around to see those numbers happen. And while the numbers will go up somewhat with population, that's the best we could do because people wanted to know what that was. And I tried to give you as much data as I could. And this has been out there for quite a while. And as Andy said, there have been a number of articles. And so there's been people able to talk about this before. And for the most part, I may go up to GM2 for a comment or question at the end, but I think that they've done an excellent job so far on following their questions. And we did look at some of those alternatives that people have brought up in the feasibility study, and some of them we had ruled out even then, and we didn't necessarily call out. What? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all that.
She's asking about the alternative behind Ocean State Job Lot. Did you ever think of that as an
Yeah,
alternative?
and we actually talked to the various companies, and we realized we would have to restrict most of their delivery vehicles to smaller vehicles than they allow.
Thank you.
Bill Lenane, 21 Deerfield Way. I've been a biker for not all my life yet, but for a long time. And I find trails like is proposed here very safe. I'm not sure everybody's here, but I think when you talk about trash, I find more trash on our roadways than I do on the bike trails. And as far as people, young or old people, being abusive of the trails or anybody on the trails, I see none of that. And I visit somewhere in my head 15 to 18 trails in the surrounding area. Some as far as away as New Hampshire, some down in Rhode Island, and a lot here in the state. I was on the CMRCP when Don first presented the concept of this, and I think what the study has done recently has accomplished an awful lot along with the town government to bring it to a point. And not all the questions have been answered, but certainly they're documented. And I think the people that maybe haven't seen their answered yet, I'm sure a little handwritten note to remind the people of some of the things. They've answered some of that. I think it's a good thing. Fourth generation here in Westborough. I think the town has always looked forward to the next generation. It costs us money, but we have a very good town, and I think we got to pay it forward like some of the others. Thank you.
Yes, Kevin Barry, 8 Indian Pond Road. I have so much that I'm not sure where to start, but I think the first and foremost would be the safety issue in regards to traffic and your specific, the traffic study that was done. Have you completed all that information and have compiled everything? Okay. So I think we probably should have discussed, or that should have been part of this, because based on the findings from that study that I received, which is only a couple days worth of traffic, just to give you an example of the actual auto traffic, at Meadow Road, that short distance, it's 380 vehicles average a day. 380. So it's 84%. Every day, the average is 60 trucks. Of that, 16%, which is 24, are the UPS trucks, FedEx. So 60, Amazon, all those delivery trucks. That's the average per day, according to your study results. And the mile per hour calculation I think that I saw was 29 miles per hour, which is absurd in that little section. It's crazy. To also just correct a little bit, it's 22 feet wide at that road. And I think the biggest concern is with 156 Milk Street, which is Lisa's house. Bobby Malhotra, I don't know if he's here. He's the property owner of the house just got taken down. That intersection, it's 22 feet wide. I have pictures on my phone. You could barely fit 2 cars there. So then you're going to force pedestrian, multi-use bicyclists through there. If there's 2 cars there, there's no room. Sometimes if someone is off center, you can't fit a second car, so someone has to stop. If they got to make a right-hand turn onto Meadow Road, they have to stop and wait for that other person to get out. That is a major intersection. People don't realize that. So in that little section, obviously a mass dot there, so someone mentioned West Meadow Plaza, which is absurd, the traffic that comes through there. It is, so on Milk Street I'm talking now, I think your numbers were around 13,617 was the average daily traffic there. So when you pointed out about the traffic signal, was it the fast blinking light? According to traffic reports or studies that I saw or legislation, it has to be a different signal. It's got to be one of those hawk signals, I believe, at that point. I don't know if you can clarify. You're a highway engineer, correct? Okay. So what I saw when I when I finally got these numbers, the legislation or whatever the Department of Transportation states that anything over 12,000 requires one of those hawk signals, a total redesign of that intersection, which is absurd in that small section. Am I right, wrong? Is that, did I read something differently?
There's a lot of questions in there, but let me start with that. So first, with the hawk signal, a lot of that is really design guidance. That is a lot of newer technology that's being used. We did look at the idea of a hawk signal, and one thing that we've had from experience is that hawk signals are confusing. I don't know how many people know what they are, but they're the 2 yellow signals and 1 red signal. They're typically used at trail crossings, and they have a different blinking pattern than most conventional lights. What that really does is it confuses people, especially for people who are not used to it. And because of that, we kind of figured that given our experience and what we've seen at other trail crossings, then RRFB is appropriate at the moment. The one caveat I'd say with all this is Milk Street is in MassDOT right-of-way. And when we do progress this design, this will be reviewed by their traffic engineers, and they will give us an agreement as to whether they think we are proposing something that is appropriate and safe at that crossing.
Okay. In honesty, you really need to take a look at that based on the numbers that are here. I mean, anyone can agree that it's a major intersection. You've got Harvey trucks coming through there. You've got buses coming through there. I think your own report says you've got 10,395 autos, buses 300, which I was shocked at. 309 buses a day go through that intersection. 868 heavy trucks. So that's primarily all the Harvey traffic. 868, according to the study, was the 2-day average, which to try to push through pedestrian multi-use traffic through there, that crossing is just at an intersection that's 22 feet wide, again.
Yeah, so to explain that count data is only vehicles that are driving through Milk Street. The Meadow Road traffic is, and let me just speak to Meadow Road as well, because you brought it up, 380 vehicles a day. That in, I'll say the federal and then the state standard. Federally, the low volume classification, and that is typically what we would even consider proposing on-street bike. FHWA classifies that as 400 vehicles a day or less, and that's nationally. In Massachusetts, a low volume road is classified as anything less than 2,000 vehicles a day. Because of this, that's how we figured between this and the speed data that an on-the-road element might be appropriate. Going back to the speed question that you had, so average speed, and you'll see there's average speed and then there's 85th percentile speed. The typical standard that we use, and Eric kind of hinted at this earlier, 85th percentile. What that means is that 80% of drivers are at or below that speed limit. It's kind of almost like a bell curve. What that means and what it tells us as designers is that this is what people are comfortable driving at. And on Meadow Road, what we saw based on the counts over a 2-day period is that people are driving, a large majority are driving at 24 miles an hour or less, meaning that they are abiding by the speed limit and meaning that we really don't have a lot of people driving. I think there can always be outliers in this, obviously, and you can see that, and we would have to really review, right? As Eric said, that could be enforcement and having police officers out there, or it could have been a police officer driving down Milk or Meadow fast. That's just something we'd have to review. Yeah.
And just to clarify, what you have is not a study. Okay, the study is another document, and that is the basis of the study that we're preparing. What you have is raw traffic data. Okay, we hire a sub-consultant to go out, they set up cameras, and they collect data. And then they bundle that data into the reports that you have. So just a clarification. So you're looking at raw data.
And just one other thing, just because there's a question about timeframes in these studies. The typical standard, what we'll do is we will do turning movement counts, so we will understand how many vehicles make a left or right off of Meadow or a left or right at Milk Street. We'll do that at the peak hours, which are typically your morning and your evening commutes. And that can kind of fuel the insight as to whether a traffic signal might be warranted. That's kind of one of the initial steps to that. And then with how we get the average daily traffic is we look at a 2-day period within a typical weekday. So these counts were done right as we were starting this project and kicking this off, so in March, and it's very standard for us to do it within school year time so that we can identify the typical school traffic as well. This is all pretty much to MassDOT standards because as we were kind of preparing this was all based to their standards, as if they were going to be reviewing it themselves.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Lisa Beauregard, how did you determine 10 parking spaces? Yes.
The available space, given the constraints in that area. Maybe there could be a few more squeezed in on the end if necessary. But well, okay. So we can dig into that further. Okay, I've been involved with a number of projects that also provide staging areas, and they're typically not enormous. Okay, I worked on the end of the Minuteman bike path. Okay, in Bedford, and helped develop Depot Park. Okay, and they don't have a lot more designated spaces there either. Okay, and that's a very popular bike path.
Right near the start of kind of where Hocomonco is, if you wrap around, if you could go back to the map where the whole concept, right? So where you see the pink road and it wraps around sort of like in a reverse L to Hocomonco, that south on the slide, I'm not saying directionally south, that's Fisher Street, there, or Smith Valve Parkway, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone. There is a ton of parking there on street, and it's free on the weekends, and there's also the MBTA parking lot, but there is, so you know, for people that are biking enthusiasts, it is a natural place, and through wayfinding, we could certainly, is like, here's the trail, you know, you're on an app, here's some alternative parking, but it's a great question, because you don't want to force parking, and as we're doing this in a segmented approach, that's a forward-thinking thought of like, what if someone wants to start from the other end, right? Yep.
And one other question, who's responsible for the trail?
Are you talking about the trail maintenance?
Yes.
Department of Public Works will be responsible for the maintenance. Yes, we'll be looking into programs where we would have volunteer work as well. A lot of towns do like Friends of the Trail, things like that, that will help.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Oh, the question was, will dogs be able to go on the trail? And the answer is yes.
Christina Kelleher, 33 Overlook Drive. My comment is just, I would encourage folks, if you haven't already, is to go to the Assabet Trail from Marlborough to Hudson. There are a number of intersections that, as you approach it on your bike, you think, oh, this looks really dangerous. But once you get to the intersection on your bike, they've managed the signage and the lights in such a way that traffic stops for you. It's not an issue. I would liken some of those to Milk Street, and also there's even an intersection, that's similar to Milk and Church with that sort of complexity. So something to consider if people want to kind of see what that sort of traffic looks like walking or on a bike.
Great, thank you. Okay. Hold on.
I'm Adam Broders. I'm at 80 Fisher Street. General statement, I'm really excited if a trail goes in. I'd love my kids to be able to ride on it, go by people's houses and be able to wave and say hi. When I look at the Milk Street intersection, what I'm mostly hearing is that there's a car problem, not if the bikes are there, there's a bike problem. One thing that might help with that is right now we have a design, like if you go to the slide, it shows 2 crosswalks to get across Meadowbrook, and then another one to cross Milk Street. Meadow Road, sorry. Takes 2 crosswalks, one to cross Meadow Road and one to cross Milk Street. When you have a big heavy bike, maybe you have a kid on the back, anything like that, it's nice to not have to do multi-turns in tight areas, or if you have large groups. If there was a chance to have it go straight from Meadow across Milk and not have 2 crosswalks, that makes it a little bit easier for the people on bikes. And I love the idea of I forgot the term, but all of the methods to help slow the traffic a little bit, because I know when I run, I mean, people are going to go in these places. People currently go in these places already. It's best just to give them a safe place to go. And so when I run along this road, I don't feel like it's the safest option, especially when I go under the Route 9, under that bridge. So giving a space where someone can safely cross and slow the traffic makes it feel like a really sane intersection, much like the previous person was saying. And I'd love to have this trail going in full stretch from Worcester all the way to Framingham. I bike commute, or at least I used to a lot. And Westborough is kind of like this hole of no bike trails, especially east-west. And so we're stuck on some pretty dangerous roads in certain sections, and this, if it was the full length, would solve a lot of them, especially near Flanders. I'm not a fan of Flanders. But kind of just showing my enthusiasm and also just an idea for the intersection there.
Okay, last question. And then we'll stick around for a little bit afterwards.
Are there going to be lights? Are there going to be lights? Were there lights proposed for this at all? I have actually 4 questions. No, lighting for the trails, or is there any lighting for the trails? Okay. Second comment to address the Assabet. I have driven my bike on that, and I believe those intersections are a lot slower than what we see at the corner there. I just have, because I ride bike trails too, and I can appreciate that. And I can also appreciate Westborough wanting to do that, because I know that we had some sidewalk laws for a while. You couldn't bring your bike on it. However, I think a lot of the traffic and the narrowness of Meadow Road and in Indian Pond, I think is as part of the feasibility study, I'm not sure if there's any feasibility money left, how it impacts a neighborhood and how it, will affect like everybody, like traveling and trying to take corners. And if there's any feasibility money left, could you actually look at that other option of, on the job lot, so where there's not as much traffic, there's no school buses going there, there's no other traffic. Could you look at that as part of another opportunity and actually like look at it, like not just like say, oh yeah, we'll look at it, but really do that to eliminate some of our concern, but also to still address the people that want to ride bikes and give people an opportunity. I'm just thinking, before you go forward, just, hey, maybe there's money in the budget for you to do some more work.
So to answer your question, comment, we don't have any more money left for a feasibility study, but so what we're working with GM2 to develop this preliminary plan, and part of that will be they'll give us recommendations on how to further design the plan. So those could be looking at alternative areas. I don't know what the final report will say. We still obviously need to work on it a little more, but that may be part of it. Okay, so I'm going to close out the questions there. Thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate it. Everyone, I think, got the copy of the brochure that was out front. It has all of our information. We can stick around for a little bit if you want to come up and ask us questions, but please take some brownies and cookies to go so we're not stuck with them. And have a great night.